You were handed a script about reality and told never to peek behind the curtain. A script where God stays unreachable, the universe is a random accident, and Jesus was just a man who died to erase your sins. End of story. But what if that story is only a mask? Just the surface of a much deeper design. A design so intricate and intentional that it flips everything you thought you knew. There's a book, rarely whispered about, often dismissed, yet hiding in plain sight, that claims to expose the blueprint of existence itself, not written by human hands, but transmitted by minds beyond our own. It's called the Urantia book, and if even a fragment of it is true, then everything, from what you believe about the divine, to how you see the universe, to why your soul even exists, has been distorted. This isn't just another book of teachings. This is a direct invitation to shatter the systems that taught you to stop searching. It didn't spark inside a church or a scientist's lab. It began quietly, in a modest Chicago room during the 1920s, where a well-known psychiatrist, Dr. William Sadler, was asked to examine an unusual case. A man, whose name has never been disclosed, had started speaking while asleep. But this wasn't the random mumbling of dreams. It was something entirely different. In those trance-like states, he poured out elaborate teachings on science, philosophy, the cosmos, and the divine. The language was refined, the thoughts intricate and layered, carrying a depth of wisdom far beyond anything the man could have produced in waking life. Dr. Sadler wasn't easily impressed. He had built his career exposing hoaxes and dismantling spiritualist tricks, so he entered the case with sharp skepticism. Yet the more he examined it, the harder it became to dismiss. Something beyond ordinary explanation was taking shape. As the years went on, Sadler gathered a circle of thinkers and seekers who became known as the Forum. Together they carefully recorded these strange transmissions, filling thousands of pages across 2 full decades. What emerged was the Urantia book, a work unlike anything the world had seen before, not just inspired by higher intelligences, but presented as if it were authored by them directly. The book didn't try to stroke egos or bend itself to old belief systems. It declared outright, humanity was ready, and this message was coming from celestial intelligences to close the gap between broken science, distorted theology, and primitive faith. Inside was a vast map of the cosmos, a radical reimagining of Jesus, and a guide for how the soul evolves. And yet, for all its explosive claims, the book wasn't pushed into the spotlight. No preaching, no marketing frenzy, no church stamp attached to it. It surfaced quietly in 1955, released by the Urantia Foundation. No author, no guru to follow, no call for donations or loyalty. That detail alone should make you stop and think. In a world where power is always branded with names and faces, this book only asked to be explored, not worshipped. So why has it slipped under the radar? Why isn't it unpacked in seminaries, argued about in spiritual circles, or even mentioned in mainstream debates? Maybe it's because the Urantia book refuses to fit into any box. It's not religion, it's not science. It's a direct confrontation with both. It doesn't hand you a creed to memorize. It points out that the story you've been given was never the whole picture. And maybe the reason it's been kept quiet isn't because it's dangerous, but because it's freeing. This isn't a book that asks you to follow. It dares you to wake up. Its pages speak of pattern and design, of a universe that isn't chaotic, but alive with intelligence and order. A cosmos breathing with purpose, where every soul, including yours, is on a path of growth. Humanity isn't cast as broken, it's seen as unfinished. Mystery isn't worshipped here, it's mapped. What started as strange night speech evolved into one of the most puzzling texts ever written. And if even a fraction of it holds true, then this isn't just a book. It's a broadcast from beyond, delivered at the exact moment humanity was ready to receive it. And that moment, according to its message, is now. You've been taught to picture the universe as a cold, endless sprawl, galaxies scattered by accident, ruled by numbers and chance. That's the story we're handed. Science says it all erupted from a bang. Then chaos stumbled its way into order. Religion often skips the process entirely and just says, God did it. But what if both missed the greater design? The Urantia book suggests the cosmos wasn't an accident. It was crafted, not a void, but a vast breathing organism, layered with structure and intention. And Earth? It's not the centerpiece, not even remarkable. It's just one tiny world among countless others, tucked into a universe of staggering depth and order. The Urantia book lays out a map so immense it stretches beyond anything we're used to imagining. At the very center is Havona, the flawless eternal universe, unchanging and radiant, the dwelling of the universal Father and the wellspring of all creation. Encircling it are 7 super-universes, each holding billions of inhabited worlds. We belong to one of them, called Orvonton. Inside Orvonton lies the Milky Way, and within that spiral of light spins our own solar system. Our world, Urantia, is just one evolutionary planet among countless others woven into this vast design. And it doesn't read like fantasy. The book assigns names, roles, and meaning to every single layer of this cosmic architecture. It describes the ancients of days, beings of staggering wisdom who oversee the super-universes, and the creator sons, like Michael of Nebadon, the one we know as Jesus, who shape and guide local universes. These aren't offered as metaphors or poetic symbols. The book presents them as actual beings within a real cosmic framework, hidden from us only because our spiritual sight is still veiled. And this framework isn't random. It runs on divine order, laws, structure, and a rhythm of growth. Worlds evolve, souls climb upward, civilizations move toward radiance. Countless beings exist far beyond us, not in machines or technology, but in the depth of consciousness itself. While we chase gadgets, wealth, and progress, they pursue something deeper, spiritual maturity. In this picture, Earth is a newborn world, still restless, still trying to orient itself, yet always part of a far greater design. That alone confronts the stories we've been told, of blind evolution or rigid theology. If the Urantia book holds even a spark of truth, then the universe isn't a battlefield at all. It's a school, a vast classroom where souls move through lessons, gathering wisdom and step by step, move closer to perfection. Maybe it sounds lofty, but haven't you always felt it? That life was meant to be more than just survival. Maybe that's why certain ideas never die. Souls, the afterlife, ascension, angels. What if they're not fantasies at all, but blurry echoes of something real? The Urantia book doesn't just dress these things in flowery language. It lays out a framework, an architecture of existence itself. It gives you bearings, placing you inside a design so immense and breathtaking that your daily struggles shrink in comparison. But that doesn't make your life small. It makes it part of something too vast to see in a single glance. You've been told the universe is empty, cold, and without meaning. But what if it's alive, aware, and patiently waiting for you to catch its rhythm? What if you were never an accident, but a piece of the most intricate system ever imagined? Maybe that's why these ideas refuse to fade. Souls, the afterlife, ascension, angels. What if they aren't myths at all? but faint recollections of a deeper truth. The Urantia book doesn't just wrap these themes in pretty words. It sketches a framework, a blueprint of existence itself. It hands you orientation, showing you a design so vast and breathtaking that your everyday problems look tiny against its backdrop. But that doesn't make your life meaningless. It makes it part of a masterpiece too immense to grasp all at once. You've been told the universe is cold, mechanical, and indifferent. But what if it's conscious, alive, and waiting for you to tune into its harmony? What if you're not a fluke of chance, but an intentional piece of the most elaborate creation ever conceived? But everything shifted because of one figure, Lucifer. Not the horned villain of myth, not the fiery demon of legend, but an actual being, an administrator within our local system. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, he sparked a rebellion against the universal order. His claim, that intelligent beings didn't need the guidance of a higher source, that freedom should replace divine alignment. It wasn't a clash of weapons, but a battle of ideas. His manifesto exalted self-assertion over cosmic harmony, and many celestial beings sided with him. Earth was among the worlds swept into this uprising. And because of that revolt, our world was cut off, quarantined, placed in spiritual isolation from the greater universe, not as punishment, but as protection. To stop the rebellion from spreading, the affected worlds were severed from the higher circuits. Earth became a kind of spiritual island, left to navigate without the full flow of divine administration. If you've ever wondered why prophets and visionaries so often speak of a heavy darkness here, this is the reason. Not because God abandoned us, but because we were walled off to contain the corruption. We weren't exiled. We were safeguarded, held apart, until we could grow strong enough to see truth again. Here's the part that makes you pause. Most religions already echo this tale without even knowing it. The fall of man, the exile from Eden, the angel hurled from heaven. They're all shards of the same larger story. But over centuries, those pieces were bent into tales of guilt, shame, and eternal punishment. What was once meant to explain a broken connection turned into a doctrine that told you you were broken. And that's the real loss. We've been living inside fragments of a narrative that was never written to condemn us. It was written to remind us of our strength. The Urantia book casts this ancient rupture in a different light, not as a curse carved into eternity, but as a passing disruption. It says the rebellion is fading, the circuits are slowly reconnecting, and Earth is finding its way back into the greater cosmic family. The turmoil we witness isn't forever. It's the labor pains of a world stirring from a long, heavy sleep. But awakening is never easy. It demands shedding what we thought was normal. It means seeing that the systems running our world, politics, ideologies, even religions, were all shaped under the shadow of isolation. They developed under a dim light, stumbling forward with fragments of truth. But that dimness is fading. The glow is returning. You didn't arrive on a planet destined for ruin. You arrived on a world in recovery, a sphere shifting into its next stage. And you're not here by chance. According to the Urantia book, every soul is placed with intention. Your presence isn't a sentence, it's an assignment. You came to help restore what was broken. But you can't do that while gripping the old myth. You have to recognize it for what it was, not a fall into disgrace, but a temporary detour in the path of growth. And now, at last, it's time to realign the course. Beneath the surface of modern life runs a quiet deception. The belief that you came into this world already broken, flawed by design and in need of rescue from somewhere outside yourself. Religion calls it original sin. Culture sells it as not being enough. The system packages your redemption as status, image, and endless striving. And yet, no matter how much you chase, the hollow feeling lingers. That emptiness isn't proof you're defective. It's the signal that you've been cut off from something essential. Not a treasure you must go out and find, but a truth already within you, waiting to be remembered. The Urantia book teaches that inside every person lives a spark of the divine, an actual fragment of God, not just a metaphor. It calls this presence the thought adjuster, your inner compass, the most authentic guide you'll ever have. It doesn't shout in commands. It nudges through intuition, conscience, and those subtle flashes of knowing. Its role isn't to dominate you, it's to walk with you, always honoring your freedom. That's the paradox of real divine love. It never coerces, it only invites. You've likely brushed against it in moments of quiet, when a deeper knowing breaks through the static. In those subtle pushes that urge you toward the harder but truer choice. In that steady whisper reminding you that your life is meant for more than routines, more than survival, more than the endless noise. That presence isn't imagination, it's contact, a constant silent invitation to awaken. The thought adjuster is your divine birthright. You didn't work for it. You didn't ask for it. It was placed within you as living proof that you were never separate from God. You are not a mistake. You're an extension of the divine, a soul in motion, unfolding on a journey that circles back to the source. And this path isn't built on belief, it's built on relationship. The thought adjuster doesn't want worship, it longs for partnership. It doesn't demand rituals or applause, it simply waits, quietly, for your attention. But here's the catch. The world around you is wired to muffle that voice. The non-stop noise, the flood of desires manufactured to keep you chasing. They aren't just distractions. They're walls keeping you from your own inner compass. The more you hand your worth over to the world, the fainter that inner voice becomes. The thought adjuster doesn't shout. It speaks through stillness, through honesty, through the moments when you're fully aligned with yourself. It can't be purchased, translated by an authority, or borrowed from someone else. Its guidance is intimate, unfiltered, and uniquely yours. According to the Urantia book, real transformation doesn't come from clinging to dogma or chasing philosophies. It comes from entering into a conscious partnership with that inner fragment. Every moral choice, every stretch of the mind, every act of love or service, these are the channels through which your soul takes its next step forward. Every decision you make tilts the scale, toward alignment or away from it. Each moment is a step with ripples far greater than you realize. You weren't designed to grovel as a sinner begging for mercy. You were meant to rise as a soul remembering its source. The divine spark isn't floating above you, keeping score. It's alive inside you, waiting to be acknowledged. And your true growth doesn't start with belief in some distant savior. It starts with trusting the subtle force that's already woven into your very being. You're not broken, you're unfinished. And that's not weakness, it's possibility. Incompleteness means you're still in motion, still unfolding, still being called forward. And when you finally start tuning into that inner voice, the one that's been patiently waiting, nudging, guiding, you won't need a preacher or a book to dictate your beliefs. You'll know, not because it was drilled into you, but because your soul will recognize what it has carried all along. If the Urantia book truly lays out a cosmic map of staggering scope, if it reshapes the story of Jesus with layers of detail never told, if it dares to claim authorship by celestial minds and speaks to questions humanity has wrestled with for ages, then why haven't you heard of it? Why isn't it dissected in lecture halls, argued about in churches, or pulled apart by theologians and scholars? Why would something this seismic remain in the shadows? the answer is both obvious and uncomfortable, because it doesn't just add to the old systems, it makes them irrelevant. It won't be boxed in by religion, philosophy, or science. It doesn't want your membership, your donations, or your loyalty to a hierarchy. It cuts straight through all of that. In the Urantia book, there are no priests, no creeds, no orders to obey without question. It offers wisdom without chains, perspective without programming, and for systems built on control, that's a threat. We live in a world where knowledge is packaged, sold, and often twisted to serve agendas, where your attention is the most valuable currency, and any idea that truly frees you is either hijacked or shoved out of sight. Institutions, whether religious, political, or even scientific, lean on one thing: agreement. They endure because the majority accepts a small, convenient version of reality. The Urantia book cracks that consensus wide open. It doesn't play nice or try to squeeze into the old frameworks. It questions the roots of theology, redraws the map of the cosmos, and dismantles the notion that anyone needs to stand between you and the divine. Religion has no box to put it in. It doesn't echo doctrine. It doesn't prop up guilt, sin, or ritual as the path. It doesn't demand worship. It asks for awareness. It doesn't shrink you down so it can sell you a way out. It declares that the divine has always lived within you, waiting to be recognized. That kind of message shatters centuries of conditioning. It lifts the veil. And the ones who thrive on that veil would rather you never stumble across this book. Even academia keeps its distance, because to take the Urantia book seriously would mean prying open doors. Most institutions are terrified to step through. It doesn't speak the language of traditional science or theology, so instead of grappling with it, they sidestep it, branding it pseudoscience, shelving it as a strange footnote. Not because it's been debunked, but because they have no framework to hold it. And here's the twist. If it had an author to promote, a publisher to profit, or a movement to sell, it probably would have carved a place in mainstream culture. But it didn't. It appeared quietly. No marketing campaign, no leader to rally around, no promise of salvation for sale. Just a manuscript, a message, a map. And because of that, it's lingered in the shadows for almost 70 years, hiding in plain sight. Books don't disappear because they lack meaning. They disappear because they unsettle. And the Urantia book doesn't just unsettle, it disrupts. It doesn't beg for belief. It challenges you to think, to doubt, to strip away what you've been taught. And in a world engineered to keep you spiritually dulled and mentally sedated, that makes it dangerous. It's no mystery why the Urantia book never exploded into the mainstream. People aren't only scared of being mistaken, they're terrified of tearing down the framework of everything they thought was true. To read it isn't casual study, it's a reckoning. A subtle rebellion against hand-me-down beliefs. A demand to peer past the surface and ask, what else have I swallowed without ever questioning? Maybe you've sensed it. That itch in the back of your mind that the answers handed down don't really fit. That there's something just beyond your grasp. The Urantia book doesn't hand out tidy conclusions, but it does offer a new lens. Through it, the universe stops looking like a cold accident and starts to reveal itself as intentional, a living system brimming with meaning. It shows a God who isn't begging for worship, but extending partnership, and a life that isn't random at all, but part of a pattern so immense you've only glimpsed the edge of it. From your first breath, the world around you, schools, culture, religion, told you this life is it. That Earth is both the beginning and the end. That what truly counts is what you achieve here, what you collect, how you'll be remembered when you're gone. But what if that story is too small? What if this planet is only your entry-level classroom, the first step in a curriculum that stretches across worlds and dimensions. The Urantia book says this life is just the opening chapter of a much larger journey of the soul. You're not a finished product. You're in motion, in transit. And Earth? It was never the final stop. It was always just the launch pad. The Urantia book lays out a vision of life after death that flips the old script completely. Forget the simple fork of heaven or hell, the one-time judgment scene at the gates. What it describes is a path of progression. When this life ends, if your soul chooses to move forward, you don't wake up in a void. You awaken on the mansion worlds, the next stage of being where your spiritual education deepens. These aren't hazy dreamscapes of eternal rest. They're structured, intentional realms. Each step is designed to sharpen your awareness, stretch your understanding, and bring you closer to the divine presence you've carried all along. This isn't reincarnation. You're not looping back to Earth again and again to work off some mysterious karmic tab. You move forward. You advance through a curriculum woven by cosmic intention. The goal isn't to nail perfection in a single lifetime, but to grow stage by stage, world by world. And you're never left to stumble alone. At every level, spiritual companions are assigned to guide you, not to condemn, but to nurture the unfolding of your potential. You are seen, you are supported, you are guided. The religions most of us were raised with don't talk about growth like this. They shrink the whole cosmic journey down to a single lifetime, claiming your eternal fate hinges on one belief, one choice, one short span on Earth. But that picture is painted in fear, not truth. Ask yourself, what kind of divine mind would craft a vast, intricate universe only to sort souls into reward or punishment after 80 years on a single world? That's not divine justice. That's control. The Urantia book points to something far greater, a living process where your soul takes part in shaping its own destiny. Every choice you make, every act of courage, every moment you resist fear's grip, ripples far beyond this lifetime. Your years on Earth are important, but not for the reasons you were taught. It's not about piling up achievements or checking off rules. It's about discovering how to live in step with the divine spark inside you. That's the real measure. Not blind obedience, not flawless performance, but alignment. And the journey doesn't stop until you stand in the presence of the Universal Father, the source at the center of all things. That road may take ages. It may carry you across worlds and galaxies, but that's the path your soul was made for. You're not here to get it all right. You're here to start the journey. That restlessness you carry, that hunger for something more, that strange longing for a home you can't name, those aren't glitches in your design. They're signals, fragments of memory, reminders that your story didn't begin on this planet, and it won't end here either. You were never meant to remain stuck. You were meant to awaken, expand, and move forward. Earth is just one chapter, not the whole story. And once you see that, death loses its sting. It's no longer the end, but a passage, a doorway into the next layer of reality, where the soul, a little more awake, keeps ascending. You are more than human. You are a traveler of eternity. And the path ahead isn't random. It's purposeful. There's a reason you're still here. It isn't just curiosity, it's resonance. Some part of you already knows the story you were handed isn't complete, that the systems shaping your lens, school, religion, politics, media, were never meant to awaken you, only to mold you. But if you're watching this far, it means a deeper layer in you has already begun to slip the chains. Something older, quieter, unshakable, a piece of your soul that won't be caged by dogma or reduced to a label. That something is truth, and it's rising within you. The Urantia book doesn't hand you a new cage to climb into. It gives you the keys to break the old one apart. It dares you to reimagine what it really means to be spiritual, to be human, to be alive. It doesn't send you chasing after priests, temples, or rituals. It sends you inward, to your conscience, your intuition, your own inner navigator. And the moment you begin to trust that compass, you become untouchable to the system. Not because you're loud or destructive, but because you no longer depend on it. You don't need someone else to define God for you. You don't need credentials to prove your curiosity. You don't need approval to dive into your own awareness. That kind of liberation doesn't serve politics or religion. It can't be packaged, sold, or controlled, but it is yours. And when you start living from that truth, you don't just slip out of the system's grip. You turn into a living mirror, reflecting back to others what freedom really looks like. The systems running this world depend on your consent, your silent agreement with limitation, with unworthiness, with separation. The moment you withdraw that consent, the illusion begins to crumble. Their power was never chains on your body. It was stories in your mind. They can only lock up a consciousness that forgets it's already free. But you're beginning to remember. You're starting to see. And once the bars reveal themselves for what they are, just narratives, just conditioning, you realize you can walk straight through them. The Urantia book doesn't ask for surrender, it asks for a sharp mind. It invites you to stress test its ideas, pull at every thread, and see what holds. Not blind faith, examination. That's why it rattles the cage. It trusts you with truth. It assumes you're ready to think for yourself. You don't have to buy every claim, but you owe yourself the exploration. Because once you look through this lens, reality won't snap back to the old shape. You'll see how every system you've known has lowballed your potential, how your soul was built to expand, not comply. Your life isn't an accident. It's a strand in a vast, intelligent weave, sacred, deliberate, alive. You're not here by chance. You're not watching out of boredom. You're here because something in you is ready. Ready to slip the veil, step off the script, stop nodding, and start asking real questions. This is the portal. Walk through. You are living evidence that the system doesn't own you. And the more you live from that truth, the more others will feel permission to see it in themselves. That's how transformation spreads, not with shouting, but with awakening. The Urantia book doesn't arrive dressed in prophecy or blasting with thunder. It doesn't scream for attention or swear loyalty. It waits, quiet, patient, almost too quiet for a world addicted to noise. Maybe that's why so many miss it, because it doesn't come packaged as a brand, a movement, or a personality to follow. It just sits in plain sight, daring you to open it and watch what it does to your perception. And once you do, something uncanny happens. You don't just read the book starts to read you. What shakes you isn't only the information on the page, but the sense that it knows you're searching. It doesn't try to scare you into obedience or bait you with promises. It simply points, quietly, to more. It lays out a version of reality so immense, so precise, and yet so intimately human that you start to wonder how you ever settled for less. It doesn't hand you shortcuts. It rewires how you see existence itself, life, death, meaning, identity, even time. Instead of neat conclusions, it offers the forbidden questions. What if the universe isn't a war zone of souls, but a classroom for awakening consciousness? What if you're not a broken being begging for rescue, but an unfinished soul invited to keep growing? What if Jesus wasn't sent to be sacrificed, but to live, to walk as proof of the way forward, not as a savior above you, but as a brother beside you? These aren't tweaks to old theology. They're seismic shifts. And once they take root in you, Nothing outside of you looks the same again. You start peeling back the illusions, not just in religion or politics, but in the way you see yourself. The shame you were trained to carry begins to feel manufactured. The guilt, the fear, the belief that you must earn your value or suffer your way to peace. Suddenly it all feels alien, because something older is stirring inside you, something that doesn't ask for outside approval to exist. You're not discovering truth for the first time. You're remembering it. And whether you take the Urantia book as literal transmission or as a radical piece of spiritual philosophy, its impact is the same. It unsettles, it shakes, then it sharpens. Not by handing you new dogma, but by forcing you to examine the ones you've carried all along. And that is where its power lives. The power isn't in the pages, it's in what those pages awaken in you. No one finishes the Urantia book the same person who started it. You either shut it and drift back into sleep, or you step into life differently. Not as a rebel, but as someone in alignment with something greater. Because once you glimpse that your existence is part of a divine design, that your thoughts ripple into eternity, that your choices steer the course of your soul, you can't unsee it. You're not here to fit in. You're here to grow, to experience, to remember who you are. The Urantia book doesn't close with a prophecy. It opens with a challenge. And that challenge is now in your hands. Is this just another book? Or is it a blueprint? You've heard enough to know this can't be unheard. The only choice now is whether you'll turn away or lean in. Don't wait for approval. Don't wait for permission. If you're still here, it's because you were meant to hear this. Now it's on you to move. Truth doesn't depend on your belief to exist, but your life won't fully ignite until you stop hesitating and start seeking. Because if you're going to question the system, you'll need the very tools they never wanted in your hands. If this message struck something in you, drop a comment below with the words, "I see it."